It's the end of supply-based creative services as opposed to value-driven creative services. What do I mean by that? Imagine you're a graphic designer, you're an animator, or UX designer, right? So you take a certain skill and you offer it to the market as a service. And most of these services has become really commoditized. So there is no premium. So that's why this kind of market is slowly dying. And at the same time, if you think about using the skills to do something, to build services, to build products, to build IP, to build entertainment and offer it to the market, then it's an amazing opportunity.
Today we are talking to Patryk Kizny, and I'm excited to talk to Patryk because he's got a lot of opinionated views on AI, and also he's had a very long career in the creative industry. So he's done from graphic design to experimental video, and now you are working as business coach. Is that right?
Almost, but you got it quite right.
Oh,
Thanks for having me. Yeah, so that's all true, absolutely. And the last chapter was me running a creative studio, working for global brands and providing 3D and CG services globally, primarily Middle East, Asia, and American market. And the second
excellent.
part, okay, coaching, not necessarily, not exactly. It's more kind of advisory. And I'm currently building a platform. I have my own piece of IP that I use for advisory. And now I'm working on a project to make it available to more creative people out there, studio founders, solopreneurs, people like that. So that's my last chapter. Seventh
Cool.
already.
7. Yeah. How many years would you say you've been working in the creative sector?
I think it's 20 years, around 20 years. I started in 2004 as a graphic designer, freelancer. Freelancer was a thing at that time. And if you knew how to do this things that it was a good career. But things have gotten commoditized pretty quickly and I needed to move on. So it's 20 years and my first studio, I founded in 2006, March 2006. So that's 18 years. Entering maturity.
18 years. Yeah. So in the last kind of 18 years, I'm sure you've seen a lot of changes. So it's going to be interesting to get your perspective on what you think about AI in the creative industry.
Absolutely. Changes the way of the universe.
Yes. I think things are going to change. Or maybe not. I saw a post that you mentioned something recently, and you said that people excited about AI might be mediocre creatives. So that's a pretty bold statement. So can you tell us a little bit about that? Why do you think that?
Sounds jerky without context. Let me provide the context.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I liked it because people like strong opinion.
Right.
That's why I post it on social media, but these conversations add a little bit of nuance to that. But yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely. So the way I think about it is that AI is a tool and it falls into the broader theme of democratization or commoditization of everything, right? And it's been always going on. So if you take any industry, any niche, anything like that, there is an average always, right? There are people, so you can draw a line through the center, right? And there are people that are above the average and below the average. And what every commoditization or democratization, primarily democratization, does is that it makes hard things more accessible and easier for everyone. And what's happening with the AI right now is that it's making all the hard stuff available at much lower effort. So what it is doing, it's elevating the baseline, right? Like everyone who is below average will be excited because without effort, their skills will be elevated, right? But at the same time, if you look at this from a perspective of someone who is an industry veteran, for example, or maybe just an exceptional artist above average. So what happens is that for them, it's not a big problem, right? It makes some things easier. Maybe they need it, maybe not. But the second effect is that it changes contrast between the average and everything else, right? And exceptional, right? So if that's the normal way of the spectrum and AI comes, that's the difference, right? Because it elevates the bottom line towards the center line, right? So the contrast is lower, right? And you can, like, speaking of examples, it took people in my studio to maybe about 2 weeks in a team to produce an amazing image just a couple of years ago, right? And right now you open any 3D program, any AI program, and you get it in a fraction of a second. So that's what happens. So that's the
Cool.
context, right?
So do you think that AI is a positive or a negative for the creative industry? So you said that it's shrinking the gap between the top and the bottom and maybe raising the bar of average. What's your opinion? Is AI positive? Is it negative? Or are you just neutral and observing what's happening?
Great question. Observing for sure. I think there is a lot of positive things, a lot of negative things. I think it all depends on the perspective, right? If you believe the narrative that it's truly democratizing creativity, that there is nothing bad in it, right? If you believe it. At the same time, it is accelerating commoditization of creative services. And for people making a living of that, it's a problem, right? And it puts additional pressure on top of other factors which pressurize the creative economy. So it's making our life harder, right? That's what I'm thinking.
So you mentioned this idea of commoditization a couple of times. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Sure. That's a decent question and good to get on the same page. So if you roll back to a long time ago, pepper and salt were a luxury at some point, right? And what happened later, due to the great expeditions and pre-globalization of the world, they have become very popular and ubiquitous, and they have become commoditized. So commoditization is when something which is rare, exceptional, becomes very common. And that applies to creative services, to all kinds of services. And it has been going on always. Like, it's not new. It's just faster.
So is that because technology advances, it just becomes easier to do CGI or, in our case, AGI?
Yeah, exactly.
You spent years helping creative businesses identify and communicate their values. So how do you think AI is going to change the value of creative work?
What we're seeing right now is, obviously it's not helping because it's commoditizing it, right? So things that were rare and exceptional are becoming more popular, more commoditized, and the value of creative work is dropping. If you look through the commercial lens at the market. At the same time, there is a second trend, because the overall quality of creative is raising. And no doubt about it. If you remember Behance from 10 years ago, from 15 years ago, if you remember websites from 20 years ago and you compare it to what you have right now, these are like entirely different stories. If you look at entertainment, go back to Pixar movies 20 years ago, right? They look different right now. Okay, this is becoming a difficult subject right now, because actually we could open a can of worms whether the entertainment is getting better or not, but technically, and in terms of the craft, it's becoming more sophisticated and more things are done in a less amount of time, simply, right? It doesn't mean the product is better, because if you look at Disney's movies that are 100 years old right now, some of them could be still very interesting, right? And maybe better than the stuff that is being shoved down someone's throat these days. But technically, the level has risen.
So do you think that AI will continue this kind of making creative work cheaper? And how are studios going to cope with that? Is there a way you can cope with that?
It's going to make some work cheaper. It's going to make a lot of work cheaper. But I think that there will be always place for work that is exceptional and that is at a very high level, that used to be expensive and will stay expensive. So it's not that everything becomes cheaper, right? Certain, like, And that's where it's getting interesting, right? Because if you look at what we're doing as designers, animators, or whatever visual artists we are, and if you think about producing pixels and stuff like that, movies, animations, videos, films, all this stuff is getting cheaper and cheaper. So that's one trend. But at the same time, what's happening is that we need to ask ourselves a question: what is the business impact of what we're doing? And the creative is becoming cheaper. But if you switch to value mindset, if you think about how can you use the tools here and opt out from commoditization game and competing on price, and start using all these amazing available tools, which make everything faster and simpler, to create more value for your clients and capture more of that value, it's just great, right? Because your impact can get higher, your costs are lower, you make more money, you make more profit. That's a positive perspective, right? And the question was, what can studios do about it? It's exactly this. I think I wrote an article on that. We're seeing the end of undifferentiated studios. Since that time, I broadened this perspective a little bit. And what I mean by that is that I think it's the end of supply-based creative services as opposed to value-driven creative services. What do I mean by that? Imagine you're a graphic designer, you're an animator, you are maybe a 3D modeler or UX designer, right? So you take a certain skill and you offer it to the market as a service. And most of these services has become really commoditized. So there is no premium. So that's why this kind of market is slowly dying. And at the same time, if you think about using these services, using the skills to do something, to build services, to build products, to build IP, to build entertainment and offer it to the market, then it's an amazing opportunity. So just to give some examples, there is a channel on YouTube called Interesting Engineering. And these are guys like a bunch of good 3D designers, probably technically educated. And many firms of this kind are struggling these days. What they've done, and they've done it a few years ago. So what happened is like they took their services, took their skills, their expertise, they started applying it to build a channel on YouTube explaining engineering, like engineering problem to the masses so that everyone can understand how a jet works or how a vacuum cleaner works or something like that. They've built a massive following and it has transformed into a platform that is making revenue on its own. But at the same time, it's an amazing marketing channel for them. And this brings them clients for their services, but not generic services, because people come to buy exactly what they see, exactly what these guys demonstrated that they are amazing at, right? So that's an example of like how you take expertise, how you take skill, build something and offer it to the market. And I think that's the future.
Okay, so to summarize, so the technical skills are becoming less important, but the value really lies in other avenues like entertainment and IP that you mentioned.
And business impact.
Sweet. So,
right?
So business impact.
Yeah. So I think what's changing is that it was easy to live off your creative skills so far, but it has gotten difficult. And the way forward is to go beyond just creative skills and apply creative skills also to business and find ways to make business impact for people, brands, businesses using your creative services and mindset and skills, whatever you have. That's the way, I think.
So as creatives, we need to get that talking about the value. So rather than we can do this 3D model for you, we need to move up the value chain, so to speak. So we start talking about the business and the value of the creative work rather than the time and hours put in.
Absolutely. Exactly. You mentioned value chains. This is something I talk a lot about. And I think it's something that is very missing in the industry, because what happened since 2018 or something like that is that there came a lot of education for creatives on business. And you have people like Chris Doe, for example, or Blair Enns, or, well, David C. Baker is established, but also himself and many others who started teaching principles of business and things like pricing, right? Going from hourly rates through fixed bid pricing to value-based pricing and ultimately towards performance pricing. The only problem is that it's amazing insight, it's good knowledge, but there is no user manual for that. And I'm seeing many creatives tipping over that. And this advice is making more harm than good, unfortunately. And one of the reasons for that is that in order to make this information valuable and progress towards better pricing models, is that you have to have absolute clarity about the value chain. What is value chain? Value chain in creative ecosystem is essentially a set of all companies, all players, like a hierarchical structure where you have the client at the very top, you have maybe agencies slightly lower, then you have maybe production houses, I don't know, CG houses, animation studios, all people like that. And on the bottom, you have freelancers, staffed creatives, etc. So it's a value chain, right? And as you progress from the bottom towards the top, the value layers, it stacks. So on the bottom, it's more about efficiency of execution. And as you go towards the top, you layer creative services, you layer business impact, you layer strategy and more risk. And business is correlated with risk. The more risk you take, the more influence you have on the client's business, the more money you can make, right? So having clarity about how this system works, and there is a bunch of flavors in creative industry. When you understand it, you can start thinking about what's your strategy, right? Do I want to stay where I am and maybe contribute a little bit more value? Think about how you can create more value for your client, not for the end client. You can move laterally, maybe introduce other services, or maybe you want to go towards the top and add layers of more strategy and business impact. So these are possible tactics. But in order to do it, you need clarity about how the system works, right? And this is something that many creatives struggle with and many companies struggle with. And that's why I think it's helpful to build value awareness and ultimately understand how the whole thing works. And once you have this clarity, you can make informed decisions and craft a strategy for your firm for growth.
Interesting. I think it's like a kind of, it's all like a new technology always brings like a continuous kind of advancement in the past. Like you said, things are getting better generally on a whole. And creatives, I think this is what we need to think about. We need to think about moving up that value ladder and finding the next level as these skills become less skillful, right?
That's one of the strategies, but that's not the only one, right? Like climbing up the value chain is something which takes effort. Everything has a cost to it. And even if you're looking at celebrities and famous actors and Elon Musk and all these guys oozing with success, remember that there is always price they pay for that, right? And I'm not advocating for every creative necessarily going up the value chain because it makes you accept more stress and more responsibility. And that's not the only way. You can stay a solopreneur, do amazing animations, understand that you're in such a value chain that for your client, maybe an advertising agency, it's not the pixels that matter. It's how easy you are to work with, how fast you are, how predictable your output is, right? This is value. But not everybody recognizes it, right? Because all creatives are like biased towards thinking that it's about pixel, it's about creative excellence, it's about amazing characters, lovely storytelling and production value, all this stuff. And they are not wrong, but it's just one part of what makes value, what constitutes value for the client, right? So you can stay where you are and live a happy life. You can also apply a little bit of disruption to this whole system and redefine the rules if you're ballsy enough. Or you may be a little bit more adventurous and leave the rotten ecosystem of big brands served by obese, old, lazy agencies served by everyone else down the chain And you may wander somewhere else, like interesting engineering or many other creatives. Or look at TikTok and Christopher Claflin. Guy learned to do amazing videos, good storytelling. He has built following. He sold some course for video, which probably was going well based on his following and influence. But recently he made a product of himself. Himself, he launched a brand. He started selling capes. And it has become a thing overnight. And he's done probably a few $1 million on it overnight. Overnight meaning spending the last decade learning craft, TikTok, storytelling, and building personal brand. But the launch was overnight.
He sells capes like a
Capes.
superhero cape.
Yeah.
He's making millions doing that.
Yeah. So that's
all.
why I said it all depends on the perspective, right? Define creativity, define creative industry, look at the market more broadly, right? We all used to work for ad agencies or maybe a little bit client direct, and it's a very narrow subset of like where the creativity can be applied, where can you make money of your creativity. And the reality is that it's much broader. So I think it's time to apply creativity not only to crafting amazing visuals and beautiful stories, but to apply it to business thinking and seeing the world through the lens of opportunity and application of your skills. And sky's the limit, right? You're only limited by your creativity when it comes to something like that.
That's cool. It's an interesting take because, to be honest, like I'm a little bit more, apprehensive about AI and worried that it can come in. Say you're a 3D modeler, for example, and you're amazing at it. But if you've gone like super niche and AI comes in and it can do modeling like very well in like in the next 2 years or something, then like where'd you go? But you're saying like you don't necessarily have to go up this value chain and become an agency that's solving problems. You can take side steps into making crepes or using your creativity in a different way.
There are certain professions or like professions or specialties where we're fucked, right? As you said, if you're a 3D modeler, if you're a typical one, you'll be automated in 1 to 3. If you're an exceptional one and you have good connections, good network, you found your place in a value chain, you can last for a few years more, right? But that's not a novel challenge because, again, when I started working in design, all it took was understand Quark Express, which was the platform for digital publishing, desktop publishing 20 years ago or 25. And you could start doing digital publications like flyers, books, magazines, and digital PDFs and all this kind of stuff, right? And that only required technical proficiency from you. Okay, the better guys knew typesetting and layout and higher level skills, but for quite a long time, you could be making a good living just off that technical skill. But as commoditization progressed, you needed to learn more skills. And then in early 2000s, you would probably become a web designer. You would start applying these skills to do designs of web pages. But what happened in, let's say 2007, 10 or something like that, the market for creative design of web pages shrunk drastically because templates emerged. Designers started applying their skills to build their IP, build their products, and sell it to the market. And that's how they started building Template Monster and all this stuff like that. It was shitty at the beginning, but right now the best websites are built on templates, and templates are amazing. And the same happened to photography, the stock photography market, footage, like stock footage libraries. All this stuff was a big thing and then became commoditized, right? Pure technical skills are not going to get you far. They have a short expiry date, and the expiry date will be only getting shorter and shorter. But as you invest in more universal skills, this is where you gain immortality. I'm just reading a book right now called Breakthrough Advertising. It's a book written in 1966 by a guy who was an expert in direct mail. And of course, the examples have gotten older, but this book still holds strong until today. So it's 60 years. Yeah, more than 60 years. And it's exceptional. Like the power of thought, the strength of concepts, and the level of like how universal they are, this still applies, right? If this guy was alive today, he would be still making good money and he wouldn't need to learn new software, new AIs or whatever, right? Because his skill was not grounded in certain technological software of today, but it was based off the universal principles, forces, things, and stuff like that. So good creative directors, good copywriters, good designers, but not pixel pushers, but thinkers. These professions will still have a lot of chance for bringing joy and money, but it's getting more difficult because the amount of creative people in the world has gotten enormous, right? And the supply is not growing that crazy fast. Although it is growing, right? Because today everyone is a brand. Everyone needs to put out videos. Someone needs to edit these videos. You can do it yourself, but if you're better, you're making money off of something else, you will want to hire someone. So market opens for casual video editors, TikTok video editors, etc., right? If I was to start today a studio based around video production, I would do this. I would understand what it takes to produce good thought leadership videos for busy CEOs, go to these busy CEOs, provide them with ideas, know-how, scripts, make the service crazy fast, send them a bunch of scripts a few days ahead, put the camera on, prepare everything, get a good interviewer over there, make the guy shine in an hour, and deliver content for him a day after the recording. Still a place for amazing service, very good money, and almost infinite market.
Yeah, everyone needs content. Let's change tack a little bit. So I don't think you're a massive fan of AI because you mentioned that it leads to kind of homogenization. But do you think there's a way for creatives to find their own? Do you think there's still a way for creators to find their own unique voice when AI makes it so easy to copy any kind of style?
That's a question of whether you are an artist or an AI artist, right? If you're an artist, you have innate or trained creativity and desire to express things, and you can do it through any medium. Like there are mediums where you're proficient with or more proficient, but it's here. It's not in the tool. And at the same time, there are, let's say, technology-based artists, right? So artists who have become artists because they mastered 3D modeling, or I don't know, this or that, right? Like mastered AI prompting or whatever. It's the thing of the day today. So the first question is like, what is creativity? Like creativity is innate and it's in the process and it's not in the output. The problem with AI, and it's a PR problem, is that we're confusing the process, the essence of creativity with output. And that's something I have a huge beef over with OpenAI and all these companies because they don't understand creativity and they have so massive PR power, like reality warping capability, that they make a mass shift in culture where people start confusing creativity with outputs. So if you're a true artist, true creative by heart, it's about the process. It's about you expressing yourself and you will have your own voice and your own style. And if it's based off of this or that AI platform, then it probably has short legs, right?
Yeah, we spoke about this briefly before, and I like this concept of kind of the process and the creative. Maybe we can expand on that a little bit. The idea that always comes to my mind is kind of Marcel Duchamp, and he has got that urinal, and now urinal is final, and that's basically because of the process and the story in him being a creative.
It's a cultural statement. So even though urinals were mass produced, it doesn't matter because it's not about the object. It's not about the outcome. It's about making a statement in culture through the medium of art, right?
Yeah. So if we try and connect this back to AI, someone can make a great looking output, but that doesn't make them an artist because there was no creative process to it.
Or it was like gambling, right? Which, and by the way, there is nothing wrong in it. I think there is a lot of great things in AI, in generative AI, right? Especially for artists, because that's what we're talking about. But it's a small subset of AI, right? But that's the one we're talking about. So the great thing is that it's good for creativity, meaning generating a lot of ideas which are wild, unvalidated, maybe untrue, but in art it doesn't matter. It's like a generation machine. It's much more efficient than humans. And there's nothing wrong in using it this way. And when you look at the process of creation or design of any kind, it's always something like generate ideas, brainstorm, come up with inputs, and then validate and curate them. And then you have a curation process. So you may think about, okay, how is my process different today? I'm not using myself to generate ideas. I'm using AI to generate ideas, but then I'm using my taste and my curation skills to curate the outputs. And if you look at the AI creative from this standpoint, I believe there can be a lot of great artists expressing themselves uniquely just simply by curating AI outputs, right? I haven't seen many, but theoretically it's possible. There's a great book from Rory Sutherland, and it's called Alchemy, and I love this book and I love his work. I'm binging it for the last few months. And he says one thing: we're wired to take the first answer for the answer. So as soon as we humans see a plausible, logical, believable explanation or answer to a question, we take it. And what happens? It stops us from digging deeper. And the true gold very often lies beneath the surface, beneath the first answer, right? So if you apply this to AI, what happens is that this process, unfortunately, very often stops us from the exploration from digging deeper, and it's choosing surface level answers, right? Not saying always, but that's the temptation because it's like scrolling. It's addictive. You get a small dopamine hit with every single mid-journey output. So up to you how you use it, but the way majority uses it, it's not stealing my heart at the moment. Although I've seen remarkable things done with AI.
Yeah. It's coming down to the value. As humans, we value things that other humans create, and just the fact that something created by AI makes us value it less.
It's interesting that you use created by AI, and I think that's the critical distinction. Is it created with AI or by AI, right? If it's created by AI, you're not an artist. If it's created with AI, with the use or aid of AI, then it's fine. Would you create it yourself without AI? If you would, and if there was value in it, there was something in it, doesn't matter whether you create it with AI, with a hammer, with a chisel or paintbrush, right? It's an idea, it's an expression.
I think in the future we may see it's still a bit controversial, but I think in the future we may see brands using AI more. I can imagine a future where brand might personify itself through, like, you go to the Nike website and there's like a Nike chatbot that is you're speaking to Nike like a brand. So then these kind of AIs become part of their brands. Can you imagine a future like that? Do you think AI will become more part of brands? Is that a good thing? Does that make them less authentic or more authentic?
It's a great question and a great chapter. We could go on for hours about it. Think about this. Roll back 100 years and start thinking about predictions about the increase of horse traffic in Paris. If the current trend continues, we will be drowning in shit in 10 years, right? And 5 years later, cars came in and changed the thing entirely. I think that if we think about this kind of predictions, I don't think you will be going to a website of Nike. I think where the things are going is somewhere a little bit else. Let me just paint this picture. When Gutenberg invented printing, like typesetting and printing press, this democratized access to information. Then came broadcast media, radio, television, and the internet. And this democratized access to knowledge, which is structured information. Then what's happening now is not only knowledge is widely accessible, but also expertise or capability, which is applied knowledge. This is becoming a little bit more accessible. What AI is doing is helping democratize expertise, meaning not only knowledge, but applicable or applied knowledge. The next step is when you merge AI with brain implants and human, how is it called? Human brain or computer brain interfaces, right? What's going to happen is that not only you will have expertise which is accessible today, you will download behavioral models. So let's say you want to become a Chopin overnight, right? Or you want to become, I don't know, Usain Bolt or Gary Kasparov or whatever you imagine, right? You download the model, gets directly into your brain. And the only thing you will have to do is go through, let's say, physical conditioning or something like that. So you will get an accelerated propagation of this because you need to get your body in tune, right? It's in the brain, but your body is not used to it. So the body will need to get used to it. And after an accelerated training, you will be a master of this or that, depending on what you want, right? So that's the future.
Mhm.
I don't think you will be going to Nike website. I think Nike will be injected in your brain and you will be sprinting in Nikes as Usain Bolt or whoever, right?
Yeah, it's great. You touched on the subject. Like, I see AI as a little bit like the internet. In the early days, the internet, we didn't really know what to do with it, but it changed society in ways that we couldn't predict. I mean, basically suggesting that AI is going to do things that we can't really imagine now. We see in sci-fi films, basically.
There is this amazing novel by a famous Polish sci-fi writer, Stanisław Lem. It's Future Congress or something like that. I know this book in Polish. I don't know it in English. And there's a situation where two guys take I can't remember Matrix very well, but the reality pill, right? Was that blue or red one?
In the Matrix, I don't know. Yeah, let's take the red pill or the blue pill. I don't know. I can't remember which was which.
Never mind. They make a trip to the reality. And what happens is that all of a sudden, all the paradise outside of them disappears and they found themselves in a tiny room, absolutely disgusting, terrible, stinky, with an old wooden table, a tungsten light on top, and they are eating some kind of like total crap from like metal plates, not even with a fork, right? Absolute disaster. And the only difference, like what happened is that they stopped taking not even pills because it's called mascons, like substances which are sprayed everywhere in the air, which make you ignore the reality and imagine that you live in a fucking paradise, right? So they like put a mask on or whatever that was, bypass the propaganda formatting your brain and discover the real taste of reality. Pretty dystopia. The broader problem with AI, the more I'm thinking about it, the more I see it. It's not whether the tool is good or bad, whether the work being done with it is slightly cheaper or more expensive. We'll go past these hurdles, right? We'll build skill sets, we'll adapt. The problem is that the AI narrative is stealing attention. There is so many amazing things and amazing opportunities in the world right now outside of AI. But the problem is nobody talks about it because AI steals attention. Today I saw a application of technology, which is, 30 years old. Projector, right? You hook a projector to a computer and someone did a service where you can project your floor plans of your future house or flat on the floor in a large studio, and you can walk through your future flat just by walking through the plans projected on the floor. right? Brilliant application, brilliant solution to a problem, very simple technology that existed for many years, right? And there is so many opportunities like that. So that's the problem, right? The enormous PR power of big tech and OpenAI, Sam Altman, Elon Musk, and all these companies warping our perception of reality and creating a world where there is much less choice. There is a great book by Jacob Ward. It's called The Loop. And he talks in this book about various forces related to technology and AI, which are essentially we're creating it, a world without choice.
What was actually, why do you say that? Explain your point to me. Why OpenAI creating this ultimate reality?
Why does AI create it? For money and power, right? Everyone is looking at the same archetype of Silicon Valley leader, right? Everyone has exactly the same archetype they are seeking. Power and money. That's why.
Awesome. We've been chatting for almost an hour, so I won't keep you much longer. But I always like to ask this kind of question at the end. And maybe creatives are feeling a little bit unsure about AI, etc. Well, what advice would you give about incorporating AI in their workflows, or maybe not incorporating it?
I would say it's time to do what I preach. What do? I stay open. I'm following what's happening in the AI space. I'm trying some of these technologies. So not only I'm a reader about it, I'm actively using them from time to time, making my judgment based on practical use. Stay open, try things yourself. Don't fall for the narrative and PR bullshit that is pushed down your throat, because that's massive. It's a massive hoax. So invest in a good bullshit meter. That's important. And don't fall for the facade, right? Don't fall for the first answer. Don't fall for the first narrative. Don't just look through things and find what really drives yourself. What do you find joy in? What is it that you want to express? What is it that you want to tell about your place in the world? Like, how do you see your place in the world? Go and tell that, right? Make it a story, make it a statement. I think that's a healthy attitude, right?
Yeah. So don't close anything off. Have a good bullshitometer, and really, you don't have to follow AI. You have to find your passion as a creative and make your own way. Is that a good summary?
It is. And what makes me absolutely puzzled and concerned is the amount of compliance to the narrative. Like, I'm hearing these voices saying, come on, everybody is using it. It's happening no matter what, whether we use it or we don't use it. It's happening. They will build it. Everybody will use it. We will be left behind. That's bullshit. I even heard Elon Musk talking about it, like saying AI is happening no matter what, somehow missing the point that he started to some extent. But anyways, opportunism, right? It's like compliance. No, don't fall for that. There are numerous examples where humanity rejected technologies. Whether we accept or reject the technology is our choice, whether individually or globally in mass scale, right? 20 or 30 years ago, we came up with the technology for cloning sheep, right? It was Dolly, the first sheep that was cloned through cloning and artificial incubation or something like that, right? We rejected that. We didn't pursue the further developments, and we agreed that we don't want to apply this technology to experimentation on humans, right? Same about nuclear power and atomic bombs and nuclear weapons, right? What happened during Cold War was that there was a massive escalation. There was a race of arms, and we somehow stopped it, right? We made a choice to de-escalate it, and okay, it didn't disappear entirely, but the threat disappeared, right? It's heavily regulated. So we have a choice.
Yeah. And I think that's a great message to end on, because people do get carried away with it, like we don't have a choice, you do have to learn it. So thank you for chatting to me, Patrick.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed this conversation and lovely questions that made me think quite hard at some points. Enjoy
Cool.
this.
Oh, thank you.
If you like this video, you love our weekly newsletter, sign up at designresources.ai.